DDG episode 106. Those are a lot of syllables. My name is Dave Hunt, and I'm joined by Michael Swick.
How's it going, Dave? We're recording just a little later than usual, but it's not too bad.
Yeah, I had to work.
Get
I
into
had to
the
work
right
today.
mindset.
Yeah, I had to work today. I
Yeah,
usually don't work on Tuesdays, but it's all good.
yeah, but we got a pretty decent amount of stuff we've been playing, and that's just gonna keep rolling on
Yeah.
over the next couple weeks.
A couple things that came through this weekend. We're like, oh, whoa, okay.
Yeah, had to make time for.
Yeah, you better at it than I am because work's been rough for me, but that seems to be the par for the course for the last 6 or 7 months. But
Yeah,
all right, so we are Digital Days Gaming. We are a weekly podcast that goes live on your podcast services every Thursday at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, even when my wife forgets to edit until Wednesday morning. No, I'm kidding. And then we are on Patreon, patreon.com/digitaldaysgaming, where you can get the podcast normally at 6 a.m. on Wednesdays, depending, maybe 7 a.m. No, she's. I love just giving her crap because she does such a great job, and the random time that she just forgets. Because we did, that's a lot of pressure. Not a lot of pressure, but a lot on her. Of like, okay, it's like 8 o'clock. We're done recording now. Edit and get it done before you go to bed. But she does a phenomenal
there's
job.
two pleas in there.
Yes.
Usually, and a thank you from me at least.
Yeah. Well, I get thank yous, and for the most part, she's the one that volunteers to edit. For the record, because you've offered, I've offered, and she's like, no, I got it. And I'm like, okay. But the other day when she's like, in the morning we wake up and she's like, I didn't edit. I was like,
It happens.
So she's editing while she's making Owen's breakfast. I don't know, like editing while she's been making Owen's breakfast or editing in the hospital. Yeah, when she was, I don't think that was that DDG.
It might have been.
Yeah, I can't remember, but she was actually editing at the hospital when she I think she had like kidney stones or something. So, but
I think so.
She does a great job. So for the record, so I'm waiting for something to either a text message or like a Twitch chat thing or something because she's gonna be all over me. But if you're able to leave us a review for the show, that'd be great. 5 stars helps. A star rating at all helps. Words help also. Just like writing something on the review, especially now that we've hit triple digits for episodes and over two years of consecutively posting every week. We're definitely if somebody does discover us, then they do see consistent content, and if they see cool reviews or nicely written reviews, that helps to grow the show, as well as just telling your friends about what's going on. So, other than that, any other important show links and anything you need are in the show notes, and we're going to throw it over to Michael for the news.
Yeah, pretty light news week. We just have a few things. The first one being Spiderman is finally coming to Avengers this month. This is the long-awaited PlayStation exclusive DLC, but they've been pretty quiet on it. In terms of where it fits in on the roadmap and everything, but now we have a date. It is coming November 30th, exclusive to PlayStation platforms. It is also coming along with a raid that will be available to everybody, featuring Claw as the main villain, and then a bunch of just basic updates. They're increasing the level cap, and then just other quality of life updates are coming along with it. So we finally have that going. So
didn't they just walk back purchasing XP?
They did.
Mm-hmm.
They did patch that out because they said they would never do it, and then they tried doing it. And
there was like XP boost in the game that they've always been in the game. I think they were in-game material purchasable, and then they made them purchasable with real money, and which like you just said they had never said they were going to do, and they're kind of like oh well. And then, like 2 weeks later, they're walking it back after like community outcry. So
yeah, the community was like, you lied to us, and they don't have a huge community, so
right.
It's one of those things where they kind of had to walk it back just because it's not a good look for the few people.
I guess I don't really know how I feel about that. So I can understand. I honestly don't think from Crystal Dynamics or Square Enix's standpoint that it was a money grab. I think it was a way of similar people that to maybe have a similar mindset to how you think, and correct me if I'm wrong, like if you pick up the game for 10, 15, $20 because it's on sale, it'll probably be in Black Friday bins for $20 or $15 this year, and then you are enjoying the game, and like adding a couple extra dollars to help to accelerate your experience, I think is okay, as long as it's not in replacement of.
Yeah, the only thing that messes them up is they said they would never do it.
Agreed.
When you promise you won't do that and then you do it, and you're doing it when they obviously did it because they expect more people to come back because Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the raid, from my standpoint, from a game as a somebody that enjoys games as a service, and apparently I'm in the minority lately, but somebody that has enjoyed most games as a service, this update that they're releasing at the end of November is making me think that I want to play the game again, because I like Division 2's raid and Destiny's raids, obviously, and this cooperative high-end content is very appealing to me. Does this mean that Avengers raid is going to be good? No, it doesn't. I have no idea. Yeah. Does this mean that Spider-Man content's going to be good? I don't think so. I think it's just going to be Spider-Man in the game and you can do some cool stuff with it. I don't think he's going to have some super interesting story. I don't think he's going to have some super interesting content. I just think he's going to be like, hey, we said we'd put him in the game. He's in the game. Here you go.
I mean, he's going to have an event, like a whole event to get him and a little bit of a story for him. But how in depth is that? Probably
it's not going to be like it was for Kate Bishop or Hawkeye.
No, most likely not, especially because it's exclusive.
Or Black Panther. He was tied to essentially an expansion. Yeah. So, but now all the stuff, like, okay, so now you're looking back at Avengers now, all the stuff that like coming up November 30th of the Black Panther expansion, the Kate Bishop, the Hawkeye, somebody else is in there too, and then Spider-Man and this raid is all like. These are slow building blocks of things that maybe can make your game. You start to layer content into your game, and it starts to go, hey, there's stuff to do. There's things to go after. There's things to grind for. There's time to sink into it, which is something that a lot of games miss, and it's taken them almost a year and a half to get there, which is nuts.
Yeah, it took them a year and a half to get there, and based on how we'll talk about Square Enix further, because I added more to this to our bullet points, but we also know Crystal Dynamics, they already have their next game lined up in terms of they're going to be working with Microsoft for Perfect Dark, to where you look at this and you're like, okay, so they're probably going to be running on a skeleton crew just to like write out the contract at this point, to where like they finally hit a point where they've built a foundation,
right? But
I just don't see a ton of support coming.
Well, you also it's like we've already talked about too. You also start when like this has been our critique of Avengers all along. When you pigeonhole yourself into what they've done with this IP, which is obviously what Disney wanted, is a form of a games as a service for them to hope that it would hit the ground running and do something like any of these other games, Warzone, Call of Duties, even like FIFA's and Destiny and Division and For Honor, like even any, like I think they would have been happy if they would have been at the For Honor level, to be honest with you. But you eventually run out of stuff. Like this is kind of what's sort of happening with the movies, where they're like, and this is not a criticism, but it's like, oh, here's Eternals, and me as a Marvel movie fan, and I'm like, who? So as they've layered all these characters on there, like, and the characters that were in the base game, like you're running out of your core heroes.
Yeah, they haven't, and then also the fact that Marvel has probably given specific heroes that they can actually work with,
right.
Square Enix does have the Guardians. Maybe they can do something with the Guardians, but now that Guardians of the Galaxy was, as far as I know, successful in terms of like critical and I'm assuming commercially, we'll find out at the end of the month.
Yeah, good enough.
Yeah. That Square Enix might be like, well, we don't want to put the Guardians in this Avengers game
right
now. So like crossover potential is probably limited there as well. I just wonder what agreement they have with Disney in terms of like how long they have to support this and the kind of support that they would need to give it to it. Because as far as I can tell, like Square Enix is probably just they're already looking at Avengers like a mistake.
I can't see this being longer than a 3-year deal from release. But like the game and 2 expansions.
What is the extent of that deal though? Of like what do they? Is it 3 years keeping the servers up? Is it 3 years of like quarterly expansions? Because they already broke that.
Right.
You know, at what point does Disney just go? Activision has an offer for an Avengers game. Can we just pull the plug on this? And Square Enix probably would be willing to do that. I'll just go into the second part. So Square Enix had a financial report. We're in that season, and they basically kind of threw some shade at Crystal Dynamics, but I think it was most people think they took a shot at Crystal Dynamics. I kind of think they just took a shot at themselves, because what it boils down to is with Crystal Dynamics and the Avengers, they said they in the future need to better pair studios to things that are for their strengths. So basically,
so you're saying the studio that built Tomb Raider that they didn't think was very successful, and they decided to give them a games as a service, and they aren't able to keep a core audience engaged. Is it not? Is Crystal Dynamics' fault?
Yeah, no, but like
Right.
They're saying basically, Square Enix as a publisher probably could have found a better home for the Avengers as opposed to, a primarily single player people being told like you're doing a games as a service, which just makes me wonder, did Square Enix just go to all their studios and are like, pitch us a games as a service thing, and Crystal Dynamics being in that weird like
Had the best of the worst pitches.
of just like they're the redheaded stepchild of Square Enix's studios, where they're just kind of every time they release a game, it's critically successful. Financially, it looks successful, but Square Enix is like, it wasn't. It didn't sell enough units. Because clearly, Eidos got to make a single-player game with Guardians. I don't see that was ever going to be a games as a service. There's no elements of that game that makes it seem like they pivoted. Seems like that was intentionally always going to be a single-player game. So
you could have seen some branching co-op opportunities in the game, and then they definitely streamlined that. Probably on the heels of like, okay, like maybe this just isn't working like we want it to. But yeah, like this is what you and I have been talking about for months, though. Like this is what scares me on the Sony side of it, or when you hear about these other studios that are trying to do this, like, we've seen some be successful, like Bungie. We've seen some have really high highs and really low lows, like Massive in The Division. Like there's just a lot of stuff there's a lot of moving parts, and I've said it before, like this is what is happening right here with Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics is the thing that terrifies me with Sony and Naughty Dog and whatever Factions is or isn't. I'm very, very worried. Like they make amazing single player linear games. Their multiplayer aspect of the Uncharted games and The Last of Us were solid for 4 to 6 months. I don't see, and I'm not using this as an opportunity to rip on them. I'm very concerned if does Naughty Dog have the ability to make a game that will grab me like Destiny and Division have done, or grab you like Overwatch and a little bit of Back 4 Blood have? Do they have the ability to make you sign in every day? And I don't know.
But the thing is, I think you're overestimating the amount of resources they're pumping into Factions. I don't think it's Naughty Dog's priority. They very much are still a single-player focused studio.
That's even more terrifying because of of why are they releasing it then? Because they need something.
They need something, but I don't think they would risk Naughty Dog's prestige.
Right, I agree. No, I agree. But the amount of I think if it wasn't this far-fetched project, we would have probably heard about it by now.
Yeah, very likely we would have heard about it now, or because they don't have a huge part of Naughty Dog working on it is why it's taking so long, and they're afraid to pull.
100% valid. But this is why I'm excited about Halo. They've proven, 343 has proven that they can do this. Whether, Halo as a franchise has proven they can do it, yes.
Yeah. 343 still hasn't had a Halo hit since they taken it from Bungie. But this is definitely, a thing that I hope Square Enix would learn from this. But I also feel really bad for Crystal Dynamics because, they're just constantly, just no matter what they do, Square just
I'm
is never
sorry.
happy.
I do and I don't feel bad. You can, and I've said this before too. Like you can look at the successes and the failures of Bungie, the successes and the failure of Ubisoft with The Division and with For Honor and with Rainbow Six. You can look at all these things and see like really good things that happen and the really bad things that happen, and write a tangible, successful plan. And to be able to produce and figure out if you can produce the content. If you can't produce the content, this is what sucks about the third-party partnerships, though. If you can't produce the content, then like you're essentially controlled by Disney. Using Ubisoft as the example again, they own the Tom Clancy rights. They're owned and operated by Ubisoft. Therefore, if they need to delay Heartland or delay Division 2's additional content or delay Division 2 as an entire game, or sit back for 6 or 8 months like they did on Division 1 and say, you know what, we won't release the update until it's right and it's what we want. They can do that. However, to the point that you've been making the entire time with Avengers is, what rules is Disney making Square Enix hit?
Yeah, but the thing is, I feel bad for Crystal Dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel bad for Square Enix, because
Right.
Square Enix and Disney made a deal, and then we're like, Crystal Dynamics, make this work in whatever time frame that they were given, and they were kind of put in a no-win situation with either Disney's
Mm-hmm.
strict rules, and then also Square Enix just being like, yeah, you guys never did a games as a service, but here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have studios
and hit
that
this
do
cadence
live service games,
and hit the cadence too of something you've never done before.
And then
we
they're
saw
like,
it with
look at our.
delays. We saw it with a terrible launch, and then delays of content and patches that come out that are bad. Like you can go back and look at the same mistakes that Bungie made and the same mistakes that Massive made, and Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics are doing the same thing, and you're like, why? Like,
But it most likely is coming from Square and not Crystal.
no, I understand.
Especially when they're trying to work on it. And I feel like we have this discussion every couple months where Square Enix is like, yeah, Avengers really was a terrible, hit on our financials. Or, oh yeah, it just really didn't work out. So the entire time they're like,
why does the publisher always blame the studio? Activision blamed Bungie. Bungie was happy with how the game went, and Activision's like, it wasn't hitting our criteria. And it's like, what is your criteria? Like, what is successful to you? Like, you're not gonna have. I'm sorry, but you're not gonna have your Fortnite or your Minecraft. Those are 1 in a millions or 1 in 100,000s or whatever. Like diamonds in the rough. Like you can't.
It's just corporate America at that point, or just corporations in general, not America, because it's Square. But like that's just corporations to where they think they provide the money, and then you make that money grow. They don't care how. They're just upset at the end of the day that you didn't make them more money.
Which is probably why Crystal Dynamics felt that they needed to monetize the XP, because they're probably not hitting the revenue stream that they were expected to from Square.
But I don't even think that was Crystal Dynamics' decision. It was probably Square being like, do something, make us money, and then Crystal Dynamics tells their like community managers like, hey, we're gonna have to do that thing we said we weren't gonna do,
right?
Because Square wants us to do it. And also Square seems to be really desperate for us to make money, because they just sold us off to Microsoft, to work on a game, and now they want us to add microtransactions. So I fully think this is just a Square Enix is just not happy with Crystal Dynamics, which is weird, because wouldn't you want to pump Crystal Dynamics up if you're going to potentially sell them? Because I don't think this ends with them just shuttering Crystal Dynamics because it's too talented of a studio. But they're beating them down so bad over the last decade.
These are the same people that did Tomb Raider and Deus Ex, right? No, Deus Ex was Eidos. Yeah, Eidos.
Yeah.
Okay.
These are their Tomb Raider developers. So it's just baffling that they're just like beating the studio down, and it's just like, hey, this is one of your named studios, because Square Enix has a ton of internal Japanese studios.
When this Avengers project came out, people were like, wow, Avengers project, Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics, like it's like a recipe of like what people are like, we're gonna get like a Tomb Raider Avengers. Like that's
and then they hit us with the games as a service thing, and it was like, oh, why? So I don't understand, like, because I feel like this ends with Crystal Dynamics being sold off at a certain point, or if they have enough money, they do what like Hitman did, the developers for Hitman IO, who bought their like freedom basically from Square. So I just don't understand like the end game for Square Enix, to where they're just like, yeah, we have this really accomplished developer who we're just not happy with because we keep giving them stupid tasks that they just can't do. Like, what is their end
I would
game?
love to see Crystal Dynamics buy their freedom and like subcontract out and like and do some more installments of the Uncharted franchise.
Yeah, that would, like, if Sony would kick the tires.
Well, I'm not saying even like Sony doesn't even need to purchase them, but just make some agreement with them of like just to build their credibility back up, put them back into Tomb Raider, Uncharted ripped off Tomb Raider, Tomb Raider ripped off Uncharted, and now the people that did that made one are now making the other game. Like, but I mean, in terms of like we've always talked about it though, and I'm not trying to like derail this entire topic, but like all of us I think would love to see another form of an entity of the story continue to somehow, especially with the movie coming out for the Uncharted franchise. But we're also all ready for Naughty Dog to move on and something cool, new, and innovative and different. And if you go through the lineup of Sony studios, like I don't know if any of them are, that either want to or are have the pedigree to do it to keep working with Uncharted.
But honestly, if Crystal Dynamics is like, hey, we want to make a Tomb Raider game for PlayStation, PlayStation would be like, yes, right, because Tomb Raider started there. They would totally just embrace just the Tomb Raider aspect,
absolutely,
and then do crossovers with Uncharted. All right, but that's it. That's the end of that. So I'm sure we'll hear more about the troubles at Square and Crystal Dynamics. I'm interested to see what the Spider-Man thing looks like, what Spider-Man looks like, what he sounds like.
It's coming out at a terrible time, though. Terrible time.
What is that, Thanksgiving weekend, basically?
Yeah, but still, like right on the heels of Call of Duty and Battlefield, and what's coming on in December? I feel like something's like December 8th or 9th or something. Like
Halo.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So like,
well, PlayStation fans don't get
that's true.
Halo, so they'll have Spider-Man. And ideally, Xbox people won't care about Avengers, even though it's on Game Pass right now, because they'll have Halo.
Right.
So. All right. Speaking of Sony, they actually relinquished the rights to the shutdown free-to-play game, The Tomorrow Children. So the developer Q Games now has the rights, and they are going to revive it. This is just a cool thing of just anytime a publisher or developer gets the rights back to their game, I think that's pretty cool because it seems like an impossible thing nowadays because some companies just like to hoard IPs even if they have no intention to use it. So Q Games basically announced today that they have reattained the rights, and it sounds like they will be bringing the game back to life. The game was only around, I feel like, for a year, maybe less, before it got shut down. And it very much felt like an early concept that could have been something really cool. And now Q Games can potentially continue that 4 years after it was shut down. I don't know if you remember The Tomorrow Children. It had a really interesting art style, but I don't know. It's hard to explain what exactly the art style is for The Tomorrow Children, but it's kind of cool to see it potentially come back. I remember meeting
the guy. I think you and me.
Dylan Cuthbert.
Yeah, we saw the game, and it was like super impressive when we saw it. And I feel like this game, it took forever to come out, and then it just kind of came out with like a silence in the wind kind of thing. But he seemed really like, I always loved it. Like he seemed really passionate about the game, and it looked like it had some really cool promise to it, and it just feels like this is something that Sony had its fingers all over, and then as it was being developed, kind of lost interest in it.
Well, it was it was announced in like 2016, 2015, and then it came out. It says in the article October 2016, and then the servers were shut down in 2017, and that's kind of right around the time where Sony was getting towards the end of like their mass support for indie titles. Like they had that shift where like indies were very important to them, and then they just went into that mode where indies come to them, but they don't really care to give it a stage or promote it. So it kind of was in that transition period. So this game never really had a chance to really find its ground, and I believe it was kind of released as like an early access type title, so it never fully got their footing. But it's definitely I follow Q Games on Twitter, and it's definitely got a cult following and has been something that they've like we're hoping to one day bring back, and it looks like they might be able to do that in some form, probably on PC. It would be funny if it comes back to PlayStation through Q Games, but just kind of cool to see a developer get their IP back. And I wonder, when moves like this happen, do you think there's other IPs that Sony might be sitting on that developers will come to them being like, hey, we worked on that thing. Is there any way we can get it back? Or is this just like a special thing because Q Games has like a long history in the industry and with PlayStation?
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. It would be super interesting to see if Sony's willing to move along from some of this stuff, and then it's something we'll never know either. Is like, how much did this cost? Like, I'm sure I'm sure there was some serious cash moved around.
Yeah, or because of the history, they were just like, just take it. That's also a possibility, because we've heard of some companies being kind of cool with that stuff, especially something like the Tomorrow Children. There probably isn't a huge financial stake, or Sony owning the rights to isn't going to like change their bottom line if they're like, we gave up the rights.
I guess it comes down to somebody's like, like they're all sitting around the table on a boardroom or in a Zoom meeting or something going, all right, guys, what are we going to do with the Tomorrow Children IP? Oh, we don't really have any long-term plans for this. Excuse me. So let's sell it back to the guy that actually cares about it. Yeah.
Or at that point, it's just like, hey, we'll give this back to you, but your next game is like exclusive for 30 days,
right,
or 6 months to our console. Could definitely be some sort of business. Though this is so low stakes, I wouldn't be surprised if it was just like, yeah, okay, whatever. Mm-hmm. You pay for the legal fees to get this set, and we're all good. Is totally a possibility, because this isn't like someone trying to buy the SOCOM IP or something. This is the Tomorrow Children that was only around.
I want the Kratos likeness.
Yeah, this is pretty low stakes for a game that was only out for a year.
Correct.
All right, moving on to our final story. This one kind of caught me off guard. Devolver Digital has gone public. They are now a publicly traded company on the London Stock Exchange, and they are valued at $950 million.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so they're almost $1 billion company. They immediately purchased 3 studios with their newfound cash flow. They produced the developers Dodro, who made Enter the Gungeon, Nerio, who did Card Shark, and Firefly Studios, who did the Stronghold series. They joined the stable of Devolver Studios that include like Pro Team, like the Serious Sam and Talos Principles developers. And during this, NetEase remains invested in Devolver. They were invested before this, and then apparently when they went public, Sony acquired 5% a stake in Devolver Digital.
Now, Devolver still is a publisher, though, correct? Like, they still enter into third-party publisher deals with other not everything that's a Devolver game is owned by Devolver, right?
Correct. Okay. They own like 4 studios, but they will still do partnerships.
Well, I don't remember who they did. They did the Messenger, which I don't think that they owned the studio that did that. I don't know who the studio is off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I feel like, did they do something with Yacht Club with Shovel Knight at the beginning?
I want to say they might have.
But I mean, like, obviously, like, you and I have great relationship and experience with Devolver in terms of like their offsite stuff that they've always done at E3, and there's always like, I guess maybe if I'm overstretching, but 10 to 14 games at their booth.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, there's usually like 6 of those like trailer airships, and there's like 2 games per trailer, and then they just have some other stuff like kind of like kiosks. There's always been interesting stuff. The number one thing that came to my mind when I saw this though was like, don't mess with their press conference.
No, I don't think this will affect anything in terms of that, because it seems like they're still owned by the people that created them. And this just allows them to just acquire studios and probably publish more games and get around to doing dumber shit, because they'll have the cash flow to do it.
I'm fascinated by the worth. Like, just the...
Well, I always wondered if like Devolver would be interested in being acquired by like a bigger company, not necessarily a Sony or Microsoft, but by like an Epic Games or something. and now we have like a dollar value that you can associate with them, which
Well,
at
you would
first
think
glance,
the perception has always been like, oh, little Devolver, like it, you know, like, and again, it's
yeah.
not a bad thing, but it's part of like the death by a million cuts thing. Like they've got a lot of cool games, but no like megaton hit. Like nothing that's like lighting the world on fire, but then all of a sudden they're just scratching and clawing to where they're $1 billion company.
Yeah, but the thing is with Devolver is like they end up with like some medium-sized hits for probably like very little investment in terms of they're just providing
their ROI
like their
is
resources.
like way over the top. Like,
yeah.
hey, we gave you $100 million. Cool, thanks. We made you $500 million. Here you go.
yeah. They're for the most part they just release like 10 games a year, and most of them are like medium to big hits.
There's no
for
bad.
Indie games.
There's very few bad. I don't want to say no bad.
Yeah.
I don't know the list, but the low end of the spectrum of bad. But then there's also like again, this is totally fine, but they release a bunch of 7 to 8.5s.
Yeah, I mean, but then if you just look at like, I would say the Hotline Miami games, mega hits.
Yep.
They have smaller stuff like I think they did Ali Ali with Team 17. The Enter the Gungeon was probably a mega hit based on how many people got
that was
into that.
in Schreier's latest book though. That was like the epitome of like slow burn.
Yeah,
like slow burn. Like 2 years later, it's like woof. Like,
yeah,
where like the developers weren't doing anything. The developers weren't working on it, and they did some Devolver sale or it hit some Steam sale, and for some reason it just caught fire. And then all of a sudden, like their emails and stuff are pinging, and their player base is like shooting up, and they're like,
Yeah, but then they have stuff like Absolver, which I wonder if that means they're doing Sifu. They
based on who I think PR is for Sifu, I think they would be.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, they get a lot of like stuff that grabs the attention of people, and I think that's where their true value is not necessarily sales, but just how easily they grab attention by putting their name on something. Yeah. And I think they're a company that will try like crazy stuff that is worth the risk, because if it takes off,
jousting.
Yeah, genital jousting was something that like that was on like TV shows and stuff, because it's such a weird concept, but it's something that was like memorable. I mean, just this year alone, they have Death's Door, which was a big indie hit at the beginning of the year.
Arguably going to be on a Game of the Year list. I've got to play that before the end of the year to have a conversation, and I'm probably waiting for PS5 for haptics, but
a game I'm playing right now, which is like the talk of the town, is like Inscription, which is a card game no one expected. I for sure didn't expect it, and I think that's going to be on the top of a lot of people's Game of the Year list. That Cult of Lamb game that was featured in like the State of Play, I think that's already out or it's coming out. That has potential, but that's like 3 games that, like, when you're talking about indie games, that's 3 of them in terms of like, if you would make a best indie game thing, which I guess now you might not even be able to count them as indie,
right,
if you're associated with
$1 billion company, Michael. That's not independent.
Exactly. Yeah. But this means they're going to probably have money to now just partner with more games, and it's going to lead to them just probably hitting a game like every month or so of just like, yeah, here's another indie that we would have lost to one of the other indie publishers that they can now just get under their umbrella. But yeah, I wasn't expecting them to be almost $1 billion company. I expected it to be high, but now that we know this, like, they're a company that you have to take serious now that you have this extra cash flow. I mean, Sony invested immediately with 5%.
I feel like Sony invests in almost everything right now, though.
I mean, that's a great way to grow money. You know, they got their stake in Discord, they got their stake in Devolver Digital, their stake in Epic Games. So it's a good way to do it. And I guess it's just like, if you're ever worried about Devolver's future, this at least gives you some comfort of just
it's so interesting, the perception. It's like, oh, Sony did a good job, like 5% here, 3% there, 4% here. if the caveat to me is like if Microsoft would have invested in it, people are like, well, what are they doing? They're just trying to pump their Game Pass. Like it's like one is like this like, oh, like one's being a smart company, and the other one's like, oh, what is evil Microsoft trying to do? Like
yeah, it's because you would just assume it would come to like a Game Pass thing, and Sony invests in it. It's just like, yeah, we just want to make our money back.
Yeah,
you know.
It's like
Except for the Discord deal, which is like you're bringing Discord to PlayStation, and it's going to be good. But yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of cool because
and then NetEase is just hovering like 10,000 feet in the air. Like what?
Like, oh yeah. NetEase and Tencent are just laughing at like Microsoft and Sony playing
while
their
they're just
game.
while they're just like flying over there. Like everybody's got like the company, and then they're like, oh, like we've got a little tower that we can look down on the company, and somebody's like, oh, I'm in a plane looking down, and then like NetEase is like, well, we're in a satellite, bro. So, like,
yeah. They're just like getting all every little chunk here and there.
Yeah. It's always fascinating. I love talking about the value of developers, and because I wouldn't have thought, like, you know, we've always like the one we always go back to is like Conan. When Conan was purchased, we were always like, okay, that's kind of like our barometer, and we're like, now Devolver is $1 billion company. Like, yeah, that's crazy.
Which still makes the Conan thing seem like an overpay.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Like when you see Devolver is $1 billion, you're just like, that's only 1/4 of what whoever bought the Conan developers paid.
And then it also just goes to show you like that Sony just stole Insomniac.
Yeah,
straight up.
Definitely.
Like,
definitely gives you those vibes of just like, man, they really. That relationship is a good relationship if they got away with it.
Well, and then also like, and again, like, does this mean that I hate to put it this way, but based on the numbers, like Devolver's 1/7 of Bethesda?
Yeah.
You know, like that's nuts.
Yeah, but publishers play with different money. Yeah. But the thing is with publishers, it's just like, they acquire teams right away just so they can say like, here we have assets, as opposed to a publisher's thing strictly like how they publish games of just like, yeah, we don't know what our next hit is because we haven't talked to the studio
I guess
yet.
Like did Devolver own stuff before this, or were they just publishing?
They own Crow Team. They purchased earlier this year, and I think they had one other developer. So
obviously this has probably been like part of their CEO's like 18-month, 24-month like trajectory of what he was like of taking the company public. So it's fascinating. So all right,
but that is it for news.
Yeah. So quickly, what's delayed? So like we briefly talked about Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2 last week. I think that had just come out when we were recording, but based on an Activision Blizzard earnings call. Well, I can't say those 5 words together. Diablo 4, Overwatch 2 are not coming in 2022. Maybe they hinted at like the very end of 2022, but it didn't seem likely.
For Overwatch 2's sake, they better hope so, because Overwatch is like a dead game. I hate saying dead game, but Overwatch now is on life support, and I don't think it can go another year of no new content. And then Overwatch 2. Yeah,
I think it just needs to go like over at this point in time. Like Overwatch just need to come out and say, hey, you know what? This is the final hurrah for Overwatch. Like here's like the last balancing patch, and this is what the game's going to be. And then, you know, we're going radio silent until we're ready to talk about 2.
But they said Overwatch 1 and 2 would be compatible with each other. They need to kill that.
That's right. Okay.
They need to come out now and say like that's not happening. They're getting all that
crap about renaming the character. Like they're getting so much crap about that right now. I don't want to go into details of that because I don't want to mess that up. But like the couple people that I know that still like pay attention to Overwatch and play it periodically are just like, this is stupid. I'm still calling them this. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah. I think they found a good story reason to change the name and stuff like that. People are just gonna be stuck in their ways and go against it to be cool. But like Overwatch as a franchise cannot handle another year of nothing.
But I think at the same time, it's just Activision, Blizzard, and for the most part, just needs to be quiet for 6 or 7 months just to kind of like let all the dust settle.
Well, I think, but based on what they've shown of Overwatch 2, it doesn't look like a big improvement because they're still attached to Overwatch 1.
Right.
And it's the thing where they just need to come out and say, like, Overwatch 1 is dead. Yeah. We are not going to be cross-compatible anymore because we want to do cool things in Overwatch 2.
Yeah, we want a clean break and a fresh start. Yeah.
Because do you really want your new game to be attached to a dead game? Like, no.
Right, which also means it still needs to run on prior gen systems, and like you're talking about 2023, like it's getting weird. Like I don't like that. So, but I don't play either one of the games, so.
Yeah. Also delayed. Marvel's Midnight Suns has been delayed to the second half of 2022. Is originally given a March 2022 release date. This is the Firaxis card-based, turn-based game. So that was delayed to give it more time.
How do you feel? Surprising. I would say like announcement and a delay within 90 days.
I have a feeling the announcement was tied to the kind of negative reaction people had to once they saw the gameplay. Because you remember there was a super high when they showed that initial trailer. People like, holy shit, this is a cool idea. And then they showed the gameplay and it's like, yeah, it's a card-based game. And then people were just like, oh, I don't think they're going to dramatically change the game, but they might feel they need to tweak some things.
Do you think that stuff that they're seeing from Back 4 Blood is affecting this as well?
In terms of just like
of them going, hey, you know what? Maybe this is not like this. You know, like you said, like maybe this card thing is not as easy as we thought it was.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there was also just a disappointment because the gameplay being so tied to the cards in terms of like, you know, the moves being tied to the cards or whatever. I could see them being like, okay, we need to polish some other aspects of this game up to do this, or they just saw the avalanche of games coming out in February of next year.
Run away!
And we're like, let's just, yeah, like even if they have the Marvel license, they're like, it's not worth it. Because you don't want to have like a Marvel game that doesn't hit, because it just makes you look bad. Because it's just like, hey, here's this guaranteed gold. Don't fuck it up. And then they release it in March and it gets buried, and then 2K looks at them like, you fucked up a Marvel game? So I wouldn't be surprised if it's like a combination of all those things, like the kind of cold reaction they received, and also February next year is chaos. So releasing something March 3rd isn't the best idea.
And in the news of Michael gets to use his PlayStation for 14 additional days, Endwalker expansion has been delayed 2 weeks. December 3rd is the next big patch, and then January 4th instead of December 21st is when it's gonna come out.
The release date for Endwalker is now December 3rd, and the next big patch is now on January 4th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I think January 4th is when they will release like the big raid or whatever. And part of the reason they delayed it is because it was originally supposed to release on December 21st, and during the like little live journal, they basically said they didn't really like the idea of like people having to do their big raid during Christmas. Especially MMO raids require a ton of shit. It's either a raid or a dungeon. I forget exactly. But basically it allows people more time, not during the holidays, to try and.
But it also gives them the holiday break to get ready.
Yeah. Especially this one, like talking to all my friends that play Final Fantasy and Sarah, a lot of people weren't too upset with this, especially like they're in the live journal. The developer, like, he teared up and he was crying because he's never delayed content. And the expansion means so much because this is like the end part of the saga. Like the current saga is supposed to be wrapped up, and they don't want to leave any loose ends. So they just wanted to leave more time for QA. And they're also doing a ton of other quality of life stuff here. Like they're changing how some gear works. They're adding like cross server play. So there's a ton of stuff they're trying to pack into this thing. So the extra 2 weeks, hopefully, will give them time. Especially they have so many people playing right now that Endwalker will bring more people in. And if their servers can't hold up, like that's a bad look.
Yeah. I mean, it's 14 days. Like it's not, it's a drop. It's a small drop in the bucket.
They did apologize because they know people took days off that they probably can't get back now. So they were just really more sad about what this means to people that like took time off for this game, because the MMO crowd is a different beast. So, but this is the way you delay a game. You put someone out there, you make them very apologetic, you humanize them, and most of the community was like, "Oh,
spray him with some water, make it look like he's crying." No, I'm just.
Yeah.
No, I'm
But
kidding.
it
I
helps.
didn't see it. And developers, when you put the developers, like this is the difference though. This isn't like a community. This wasn't like a community manager.
This
This
isn't the yellow piece of paper that
yeah
Cyberpunk or CD
yeah.
Projekt Red posted every 2
This is
months.
hey, this is my baby. And I'm telling you that my baby's not ready, and I'm disappointed
Mhm.
that it's not ready. But you're not going to get it until it's ready.
Yeah, this is the best way to go about delaying it, as opposed to putting an ugly yellow picture.
And this is even coming from me. Like again, I don't play this game, but this is this came out near the middle to end of last week, so borderline like I hate the delay within 30 days kind of thing. But it's also like a live service game of where they're probably like, hey, like it could have been something as simple as like we test patch this in our test servers and it's not gonna work.
Yeah, like we just need. And who knows, 2 weeks might not even be enough time realistically, and they're gonna have to crunch like crazy just to get whatever done they need to get done. But yeah, that is everything that was delayed that I remember, because I think more stuff was delayed.
Yeah, but I think there's been rumblings about stuff. But all right, so what we're playing and watching. So I'll go first really quick. So I was able to finish. I picked it back up partially because Owen was kind of bothering me about it. But I did pick up and finish Skyward Sword. Still, like I've said before, one of the coolest, better stories that I enjoyed in terms of like the foundation of the Zelda franchise and the foundation of the Master Sword. I still found that to be really cool. Like some of the ending dialogue was really cool. I really, really wish Zelda's games had voiceovers. I really do wish, because I think that would help. The stories are so cool, and if they could get some actors and actresses to do some voiceovers and stuff to give
People would be so upset.
I agree.
With whatever voice actors they pick.
But
like
no
doesn't
matter
talk
what, anyways, like it's like I don't know. But just like there has been times where Fee is talking to you, essentially the sword character, the Master Sword character, is talking to you about, this is my whole sole purpose, but I want you to know that this is some of the coolest data that I've ever collected, and you're giving it your own voice in your head as you're reading it. Some of it I was reading out loud to Owen, because he can't read, and he was a little interested. The frustration parts of a Zelda game with filler set in though. Like I was trying to, like there was, if I would have like worked at it hard enough, I probably could have beat the last boss, but I didn't have like the Hylian shield, like the Hyrule shield. So the only way to get the Hyrule shield in Skyward Sword is to go do a boss rush mode where you have to defeat 8 bosses. You're not allowed to use potions and your health doesn't regenerate. You can pick up hearts and stuff. So that was a little irritating. And during that boss rush mode, it just showed more of how annoying the sword motion controls are, even on a pro controller. Of like just not as precise, because you need to like, especially you're not necessarily timed, but you are trying to like, you don't want to sit there and spend 20 minutes on 8 consecutive bosses in a row. So like, and then the demise fight at the end of the game was heavily focused on sword combat, and it just got irritating. I would have loved to them that if they were gonna to redo it like they did it, is to redo the sword combat somehow. I don't know the answer for it, because the whole core of the game was built around left horizontal slice, right horizontal slice, diagonal slice, vertical slice. Like it was all built around that. And it worked at the time with the Wiimote, and I was looking forward to and I did try to play it with some of the Joy-Cons, and I just like I no. I couldn't do it. So did finish that, so I was pretty happy with that. And then over the weekend, my wife and I went to see Eternals in the theater. Good. It's getting a lot of hate. I didn't have any major problems with it, but I also didn't go in with any kind of crazy expectations. I really didn't know who the Eternal characters were. I've seen a lot of conversation around like, oh, I wish they didn't introduce so many characters at the same time, but I think they kind of had to, in order for like the way that the Eternal story was written for this movie. I think that they all needed to be there at once. I'm really curious to how they're going to weave this into the MCU. And I'm at the point where I realize, like, I don't know if I want to wait 6 years to find out this answer.
Yeah, especially with their like galactic stuff, they usually don't let those characters interact with the everyday Avengers
Yeah.
until the actual Avengers movies.
Yeah,
So
so
it might
it's
be a
like,
while.
yeah, and that's a little, like it's like there'll probably be like an Eternals 2, but is that going to be 4 or 5 years down the road? Like, it's just all this stuff of like, I love what Marvel's doing, but at the same time, like, I'm wondering if I'm just getting either time fatigued or character fatigued, because it's like, oh, the Hawkeye show's coming. I'm like, okay, and then it's like, oh, Spider-Man. I'm like, all right, and then they showed, I'm gonna get the name wrong. You're probably gonna know this a little bit better than me. They showed the trailer for another Marvel thing that's being produced by Sony, but he's like a vampire.
Oh, Morbius. So
Morbius.
that's only in the Spider-Man, the
Okay.
Spider-Man-less
I,
Spider-Man
I
universe.
figured that. I could tell by that, but it was just kind of one of those things where I was like, I was like the story and the dynamic that they told with the Eternals franchise, I was super interested in. And then at the end, like the mid cutscenes, they start throwing stuff, and I'm like, he's who?
Yeah.
Attached to whom? I'm trying obviously not to spoil anything, but there's a mid credit cutscene, there's a mid credit scene, and there's an end credit scene. But I mean, I wasn't disappointed in the movie at all. It was long, but it wasn't like I wasn't upset or aggravated or didn't think it was a bad movie. I think it's getting a lot of it's getting a lot of unneeded crap.
Yeah.
So, but I liked it. I still think that Shang-Chi is better origin story, but it's an origin story of 1 versus an origin story of 6, or however many was in Eternals. Yeah, and that is mostly it. Activision public relations was nice enough to send both Michael and I copies of Call of Duty Vanguard. I have not had a chance to start it yet. I think you have. I see it on your list here. Yeah, I'm just trying to. I think Skyward kind of got me. Finishing Skyward Sword kind of got me out of my funk a little bit. And trying to mess with Dread. And Angela mentioned to me the other day that we haven't finished playing It Takes Two either. So.
Yeah, that just said Game Pass, so I might try that.
So it's fun. So.
Yeah. So I did start Vanguard single player campaign. I played a couple rounds of this multiplayer, and for the most part, it's Call of Duty multiplayer. It feels fine. Like
people are really liking the time to kill though. Like I'm here, like a lot, like how they seem to be positivity around how quickly time to kill is.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels like a good Call of Duty multiplayer. Like from the few matches that I played, in terms of like it sounds dumb to talk about, but they nail the feel. Like it feels like a Call of Duty game set in World War II. So they're not doing anything crazy with this one. I don't know what the staying power of this multiplayer would be, because I know people that still play Modern Warfare, and then a ton of people that are still playing Warzone. So I trying to figure out where this multiplayer is going to shake out.
Which is the question we've had for the last year and a half or so. Like, okay, you got your Warzone, and then you got your Modern Warfare, and then and what's the one they released last year? I can't even think of the name of it right now. But
I can't. Yeah. I can't.
I can't think of the name of the Call of Duty game. But it's not there. And then you got Vanguard. Like, how are all these living in the same ecosystem of different, battle passes and seasons and functions? And
Cold War.
Yeah, there you go. So.
Yeah. But that is going to happen with Modern Warfare being as good as it was, and then Warzone being consistently, like, despite all the issues with cheaters and stuff, being consistently there. Like when I played this, I'm like, oh, this was fine. But part of me, especially when you load it up, it says I think there's a section on my screen for Warzone, and then there's a section for Modern Warfare, I believe, that if you have the game, you can just load it from there. And I played a couple rounds of the multiplayer for Vanguard, and then I was just like, I wonder what Warzone is up to. And I wanted to click into Warzone, which is just like, I'm sure that's fine with Activision, but me as someone who has like a new game to play, I'm just like, why the fuck am I going to go play Warzone right now? I got this thing.
Yep.
So I ended up pulling away from the multiplayer just because I was just there to test it out. I'll probably go back to it because it feels good. It's a Call of Duty. I like the maps that I played. World War II guns, like,
crossplay tremendously helps.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, crossplay, all that stuff helps. And just a World War II shooter, like, you're kind of so used to the guns. There's nothing like surprising in like the loadouts for the guns, so it's pretty straightforward there. I did start the campaign. They provided me with a Series X code just because I thought, I would have access to my PlayStation for a little bit, so I asked for an Xbox code. And I started the campaign, and it's pretty good. Voice acting is great. The story is pretty compelling for like a World War II campaign, but it has got a bunch of technical like frame rate issues that I'm having. Yeah, and just weird glitches in terms of like weird artifacting and just like background popping. And I've never had this in a Call of Duty game, and I'm even more surprised at a Call of Duty game on my Series X.
Yeah,
because the Series X has been a champ in terms of handling games.
I'll definitely have to mess with the campaign a little bit and see if I see the same thing, because they were PS5 or PlayStation for me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, which is part of the reason why I wanted to get us on different platforms, is just because I saw this and I was just like, I wonder if it's like this on PlayStation. I reached out to some people playing, and they did say there's like some weird frame rate drops. But I honestly, in all the years I've been playing Call of Duty, I've never had a frame rate issue.
Yeah,
except on like the
tech's
PS3
never really
era.
been the problem. So.
Yeah, especially this game looks fantastic. When it's, for the most part, it plays really well. It's just anytime there's a frame rate issue, because it's a Call of Duty game, it just throws me off of just like, why did the frame drop? Because it's not even in like crazy moments. It's a lot of like in transitions, like when you're opening a door and moving on to the next scene, it like frame rate
chugs or struggles.
Freaks out. Yeah. And then it's steady. So it's just like weird stuff that I'm just not used to seeing. I'll probably finish the campaign. It's a Call of Duty campaign, so it's not super long. So I'll finish it and have a full report. But I'll be curious to see what it runs like on a PS5 on your end. Just because, again,
I'm off tomorrow. I'll play tomorrow.
Yeah, because I haven't had anything that my Series X couldn't handle so far. I've had the PS5 have some issues every once in a while, but the Series X usually has the raw horsepower. It can go through anything.
Just like you and I were talking, I'm looking to get my hands. I'm looking to get my hands on a Series X, partially because going full digital maybe wasn't the best idea. Look at that! I can admit when I'm wrong. People see.
Yeah.
But
it's a generation early, probably, to go full digital.
No, but it's just more or less I've seen some stuff like popping up on Twitter that I'm like, oh, that's a disc, and I'm like, I'm 100% digital, and then in my mind, the justification for it is like, okay, the X is an upgrade over the S. I get the disc drive and I get a stronger console, and
and more disc space. And...
so there's an upgrade to it as well. I don't regret. Like, I'm not upset or regretting that I bought an S or I bought a digital-only PS5, but I am not thrilled with the lack of versatility that I have for myself right now. That's all. So now I can justify, like, oh, I get a disc drive and I get an X, so I am trying to get one. If I do get my hands on one, if anybody's interested in an S, we can talk about a fair value for it of retail or, maybe a little less.
Especially right now we're looking at like Black Friday sale to like fill in the gaps for our
or just little things like you even recommend, like, oh, let's update let's boost up our GameFly stuff to like 2 or 3 games. I'm like, oh, that's great. I don't have a disc drive.
I completely forgot about that. Yeah, just like, yeah, you'll have to just do PS4 games.
Hey, Michael's like, where's your PS4? I'm like, what did you say?
It's like I can't go back. It's put an SSD in there. I'm still playing Riders Republic. Just to reiterate last week, gameplay wise, fantastic. It's really entertaining. I'm mostly playing the game on mute while listening to podcasts just because the dialogue is kind of cringe. I got kind of addicted to their mega race mode, which is a 64-player race over multiple different sports.
I've seen highlights of people like riding the bike and taking a jump and like automatically switching to skis and then going down on skis and then switching to like a wingsuit or like a jetpack.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, this is cool.
So that's the mega race mode. It's 64 players.
Wow.
Usually when it starts, it's chaotic because the lanes aren't meant for 64 people.
Well, you had talked about last week where you were always like, I'm not sure if I'm with somebody or if I'm doing against a ghost like this. So this is real, like 64 players like are starting at the same time.
Yeah, you basically go to like the home base and then it'll tell you, like, when you're playing, it'll be like, oh, a mega race is starting in 3 minutes. Do you want to go to the home base and queue up? And then it just drops you into the race. and it's chaotic, and it made me want to go buy different clothes for my character because right now everyone's wearing the same starter outfit. So when you have 64 people,
it's like
on
Fall
skis,
Guys. Like,
no, it's seriously, it's like that at first, but with not full collision.
yeah,
Because
okay, all right. So this says you can't get trolled by somebody or whatever.
no, but like you can easily throw yourself off because there's like everyone's wearing an orange jacket.
Riders Republic, where's Waldo?
So it's a little chaotic, but I really love the transition.
Yeah,
So
that's cool.
it's like 3 rounds, and each round has like 2 to 3 different sports that you transition to.
Nice.
So as soon as you hit a different leg of the race, you automatically switch into the next sport, and it's pretty like your character glitches a little bit, like scrambles, and then immediately is into the next sport. It's a really cool visual. The only problem I have, because it's 3 rounds, you often just get a lot of people drop out once they realize that they have no chance of catching up on the race.
Yeah, but like, what are the rewards for winning? Like, why are you stopping? Like, you're doing the race to do the race, not to win. Like,
yeah, and like right now I'm not great at it, so I'm usually in like 20th or 30th place out of 64. But the only problem is so many people drop. I end up in last place because they don't register those people after they drop out.
I'm gonna finish 34th. I'm not gonna win. I'm out. I'm not gonna be top 10. I'm out. Like, why?
So then, like, I'll be pretty.
You gotta be missing out on some XP for not finishing the race, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I haven't quit out of a race, but I would assume you're not getting the star or the bucks or whatever you're getting. But it sucks for someone who's like me, who's like in the middle skill wise. Yeah. To where I'm just like, oh, cool, I'm 20th out of 64. That's not bad. We hit the second race. Oh, I'm 20 out of 20.
Yeah.
Because 40 people bailed on the race.
That's crazy.
I wish the game would just keep them registered based on where they dropped out, just so it makes me feel a little better about myself in terms of like, oh, I'm not in last place.
Well, the thing that sucks too is that you could have finished. Excuse me. You could have finished like 18th, and and then there's only like legitimately finished 18th, but then for whatever reason 15 people get off because like, oh, I didn't know this was 3 rounds, I'm out, I gotta go eat dinner or whatever, and then you're like, oh, like I did all right, and there's only like 23 people left. You're like, oh, it's kind of like discouraging, it's like, but
yeah, no, exactly, like, and I'm fine with it because I can tell myself like, oh no, well 40 people sucked, so that's why they left. But I'm sure that's gonna mess with some people, that they're just not gonna do this mode after a while because they're just gonna be like, well, I don't want to be in last place every time.
For sure.
But yeah, so I'm just playing that. That's kind of like my I don't know what to play game, where I can't like commit myself to like a full like hour session to a game. So that's been kind of my like, I got like 20 minutes to kill before doing something. Let me just load up Riders Republic and just jump into random races and just use all the different vehicles. So enjoying that. And it's just an interesting world, like when you're on a race and then like you see like multiple people jumping overhead and they're not in your race. They're just doing their own thing.
Yeah, it's
so
like
you're
open
just seeing
world.
like the very alive world. Cool. And there's no collision, so it doesn't really bother you when you see people just like cut across your track who are not in your race at all. So enjoying that. And then the game that's consumed me, Devolver Digital sent me a copy of Inscription, which is a game on PC. It's a card game that is hard to explain. So it's a pretty basic card game. You have different animal cards. They have hit points. They have health points. And you're just doing this game. But the catch is you're basically locked in a cabin with like this mysterious creature who's doing all these rules. And you're being held against your will, as far as I can tell. And you're forced to just play cards with him, and then some of the cards are alive and they're kind of telling you a story. You can walk around the cabin, and there's like environmental puzzles to work with. So it's got a lot of like horror vibes going on with it, and some great like atmosphere with this game that is just super captivating. There's so many cool twists and turns that this card-based game has that I wish I can spoil, but I would not want to take any of these moments away from people that are interested in a type of game like this. But I was not expecting, because I heard a lot of people talking about this, but because it was just a card-based game, I was not expecting to get into it, because I'm not into like tabletop card games. I'm not really into board games, anything like that. But the atmosphere, the art style, all that stuff just super hooked me. And then when I get to the first twist or turn, and then my mind's blown by what's happening, and then a game hits me with like 2 or 3 more after that, just has me just completely hooked, to where I'm at the point where I'm actually kind of interested if they would ever release actual physical cards for this game. I would totally be interested in playing the card game in real life, but I'm also just so fascinated with how this story has unfolded, to where this went from like a game that like, oh yeah, the people that like it are the people that I would expect to like it. But now I'm looking at it like this is a potential game of the year for me. And it's something that I wasn't expecting, which is what Devolver Digital's so damn good at, is just hitting, at least me personally, with 1 or 2 games that I had no idea existed prior to them being announced, that end up becoming like a favorite game of mine. So like highly recommend checking out Inscription. I wish I could spoil some of the stuff in it. I wish it was on consoles as well, just because I'm not like...
It probably sounds like something to be great for you to mess with on the Switch.
Oh, totally. Especially because it's like just a card game, like just use the touch screen to like move the cards around would be super nice. But right now it's only on PC, which is probably like the biggest barrier for this game. In terms of me sitting down in front of a PC and playing is still kind of difficult for me to do.
Yeah.
But I've been hooked on this, and I was terrible at this game for several hours until I finally like figured out the mechanics, or in my case, figured out a way to cheese the game.
Yeah.
To where I was only going for powerful, super powerful cards that, for the most part, like, yeah, technically I'm not cheesing the game, but like I'm getting these powerful cards that like kind of break
high risk,
any
high
sort
reward
of strategy. Yeah, to where it's like my strategy is just like, okay, I'm gonna fail a couple times until I get this powerful card, and then I'm gonna try and duplicate this powerful card as much as possible and just burn through aspects of this game. So highly recommend Inscription.
Nice.
I would love to spoil the shit out of this game. Just because there's some like mind-blowing stuff, but I wish it was on like the Switch, for instance. That would be fantastic. If I had a Steam Deck, this would definitely be a game I would want to get on the Steam Deck.
$1 billion company now that you get on it. So.
Hopefully. So that's it for playing. I did download Forza Horizon last night.
Yeah, I need to download
didn't
that
get
too,
a chance to play it.
People are
like
raving.
100
They're
gigs.
raving about it, man, on the reviews and like.
I know.
They're raving about that game, and I'm just like, I guess that there's a part of me that's like happy that there's like a highly rated Metacritic game on Game Pass right now, like highly, and like that's kind of cool.
Yeah, and it's an arcade racer too. It's not like the simulation Forza. It's the arcade Forza, which immediately has my interest because of that. But I think that's pretty much it. I did finally make it to the last act for Back 4 Blood, but I was up until 3 a.m. with my friends trying to beat it, and we're trying to beat it with like 2 strangers or 1 stranger at one point, and just couldn't get enough coordination.
They released a roadmap too, right?
To complete that. Yeah, they released the roadmap. They're doing like some quality of life stuff, some single player stuff, and some holiday events. But I was a little disappointed that the expansion's not coming until like a unknown time next year. I was really hoping we would get something earlier than that, maybe December, maybe early January, just because I fear like it's already been hard to get my friends motivated enough to like come back to the game after 2-3 weeks.
Yep.
Because everyone's moved on to other things. And then I'm worried if we wait too long.
Yeah, that's always the struggle. Like, is the Back 4 Blood developer okay with people playing their game in like 21-day chunks and then not playing it for like 8 weeks and then playing it again for 21 days and not playing it for 8 weeks? Like, that's the dynamic of what you're trying to figure out. Some companies are fine with it, like, you know, and some companies are like, no, we got to figure out some way to make you log in every week, you know. So it's just gotta they just gotta figure out what they got to get their cadence. That's all. And
like a
you
release
got to
date.
be ready sooner. Like the roadmap should have been almost pre-launch.
Yeah, especially I think I would be more cool with it if there was actual time windows on it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's basically like, here's a roadmap, here's November, here's December,
Yep.
and then here's everything in 2022, but it's not divided in a way that lets me know, like, oh, March.
Yeah. Well, and then the thing obviously that's always hovering over everybody's head right now is the cool thing and the bad thing about it is, yeah, it's on Game Pass. That's great. How long is it going to be on Game Pass for? Is that expansion
Yeah.
going to be included on Game Pass? Like, there's just a lot of right, but there's just questions that people are asking, and then is the expansion not being included on Game Pass enough to be somebody be like, oh, I have the base game on Game Pass and I'll spend this money, and then 4 months down the road it comes off Game Pass. Oh, now I own the expansion, but I don't own the base.
I think that's the issue, is just like,
if they come out and say it's always going to be on Game Pass, I'm sure you'll see expansion sales increase.
Yeah, exactly. And until we know how long it's on Game Pass, I wouldn't feel comfortable buying the expansion on Xbox right now.
Well, and then the other thing too is, like, as an example, like MLB The Show is still there, and it's so is it a year? We thought maybe it was 6 months. We thought maybe it was 9 months. Like, we're kind of past the 6 month window, almost to the 9 month window now. Like, it's the double-edged sword. Like, oh, it's cool that it's on Game Pass, but like you said, I don't want to. How much is the expansion going to cost?
Yeah.
Well,
they for Back 4 Blood.
Yeah.
It's part of the Ultimate Edition. I think it's like a $30 or $40 expansion. But still, that's a lot to commit to something that you might not own on Xbox.
Yeah, for sure.
So I wish they would have just had more upfront dates with the expansion, because like, if you're like, okay, Back 4 Blood might be a year, if they had the expansions listed for like, oh, here's March, April, July or something, then you'd be like, oh, I'll buy it because it's going to be there by the time Game Pass is done, and you wouldn't feel like you're wasting your money.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it for playing. Haven't really watched anything of note. This has been kind of plain Inscription every chance I get.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, we'll go through like 2 questions really quick. You can send us questions using hashtag AskDigitalDays. You can send them on Facebook, Twitter, Discord. However, if you use the hashtag on Twitter, post them in the Facebook group, send them to us on Discord. There's a Ask Digital Days channel in our Discord. All those links are in the show notes. Stefan Wren, what game do you think is a bad game but becomes a good game when you play it with friends? Anything that would be games as a service.
Yep.
Monster Hunter,
50 hours in
Back 4 Blood, Destiny, Division.
Yeah. I wouldn't have put 50 hours into Destiny based on that year 1 content.
Right.
Like, if I wasn't playing every day with friends at that point, I would never have hit 50 hours. I would hit 10 hours and been done.
Yep.
People really want single player content for Back 4 Blood. I think that game would be terrible as a single player campaign, well, especially when you play with the bots. I think pretty much anything co-op, because usually co-op games sometimes lack a little bit of polish.
Which can be made up for because you're laughing your ass off with your buddies. So Mario
Party is a shit game. It's fun with friends
and alcohol.
Yeah. There's a ton of games like that. Usually it's anything co-op. Most competitive games, if you think about them, like, fuck competitive games. But if you're playing with friends, it's a little bit more tolerable.
Yeah. And then Robert Cartwright, when you buy games, do you tend to go for the entry-level version or splash out on the top version filled with all the extras? I sadly have 0 willpower, especially when another DDG listener is in my ear saying, do it. I know who that is. And I tend to get the version with all the goodies. Later this week, for example, Battlefield 2042 is being released, and there is a $50 difference in levels, or €50 difference in levels, sorry. And we established last week that Michael clearly has no taste in food. How can you be an American and not like peanut butter or pretzels? And so I was wondering, how do you have your steak cooked? We answered this. Okay. I should make him pay $7, shouldn't I?
Oh yeah, we talked about this on the food episode. I, like any normal person, medium rare.
Yes.
Or medium.
I always mess this up, and my wife screams at me about this. So I'm just yes, that is the correct answer.
Yeah, I believe she said, because last time you said well done, and then she was like, no.
I think I said medium well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, medium.
Yeah, medium rare. So.
Yeah, medium rare. If you ask for your steak to be well done, you're a monster. And I just go back to that one E3. We went to that steakhouse, and
Mm-hmm.
Emra tried to order a steak well done, and they legit told him we don't do that here, because they got so offended that he wanted to ruin a steak by having it well done. Just always cracks me up. Just thinking about that. But yeah, no. If you have your steak well done, you have problems.
And then in terms of games, the only game that I'm comfortable at this point in time in my life going full bore into full like gold edition expansions or full content of it is Destiny. Like I'll buy the Witch Queen Deluxe Edition, which I actually need to do before December because there's something with the 30th anniversary. But the franchise has to be like super proven to me. Like if Uncharted 5 came out with like a gold edition, I'd buy it. Last of Us 2, Ultimate Edition or whatever, I would buy it. But I'm as an example, the example you're using with Battlefield 2042. Like I would just buy the base version and make them prove to me that even if it means that I end up spending $60 instead of $50 later down the road, you got to prove to me that you're going to support your game and it's going to work well. So.
Yeah, I stay away from like Ubisoft's gold editions because it's usually like extra content I don't interact with. Most Ultimate editions, even if they come with a season pass, I'd rather just wait to see if I'm going to like the game. With the exception of Back 4 Blood, most of my friends ended up getting the Ultimate Edition just because if one person got the Ultimate Edition, then everybody gets access to the Season Pass. Though my friends suck at coordinating, so I think all 5 of us ended up with fucking Season Passes Ultimate Editions. So it was just like bad coordination there. Yeah. But it would need an incentive like that to where it's just like one person gets the Ultimate Edition and everyone benefits from it, then totally on board. But for the most part,
yeah, but then that guy is like the bitch that always has to be online.
It's basically what was going to happen, but luckily for a game like Back 4 Blood, like it's okay because you want to play with your set of 4 people because the bots are terrible in that game. But yeah, no,
I would if I was in your friend group for Back 4 Blood, I wouldn't want to be that pressure of like I have to be on like I gotta be online. Why do you have to be online? Because I'm the one that owns all the stuff, and if I'm not there, they're gonna be mad at me.
My friend exclusively plays after 11 o'clock when his Family Guy time is done, when he's done spending time with his family.
Okay.
So it's one of those things where like it's good that he has the expansion pass.
I turned my Xbox on. I'm going to bed. Just join on me.
Basically, but it's one of those things where like if he was the only one with the expansions, it would be annoying because then we would all have to wait till 11, 12 o'clock at night to play.
Yep.
But at least that's an option. But for the most part, like these Ultimate Editions and like a lot of them just come with extra currency, which is just, like aggravating.
And and then the like, oh, look at us. Like I hate to say it like this, but we're fortunate. Like for the most part, like when we get things from PR, like for review, unsolicited, they send us like the high-end editions.
Which it's funny, that used to not be the case.
Right. But then they don't expect any other, like they're not like asking like 6 months down the road, like, hey, did you talk about this? Like they're just like, here you go. Like, and I don't know if that's just the way that it just works. It's just easier to just, hey, let's just not worry about it. Let's just take care of it and send it. So that they have all the stuff there. So that when somebody goes, hey, have you played that? Like, oh, let me go back and check it out. Oh, I don't have this, I don't know if that saves them frustration or headache later, but it's always just like, when I put the code in and I see the stuff, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, I think they do it specific. I think there's like
because I think Riders Republic was like that for us, right?
I think so, yeah, and I think Call of Duty as well. But I think they do it because of the expansion pass thing. Because usually when you review a game that has like a season pass, sometimes PR will hit you. At least back then, they would hit you up in like a month or two, being like, hey, just so you know. Here's a code for the expansion because they want you to keep talking about the game because that's the name of the game.
Might just be a time saver for them now. Like send it out once and just not worry about it. Yep.
Though I also wonder if it's like a thing to influence the influencers to where like they don't realize that they started with extra currency in their thing, so then they're less bothered by the microtransactions in some of these games. I wonder if that's also like not the main reason to do some of that stuff, but it's definitely something that's
I'm sure that there's some preemptive mind games going on in there too. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So,
But for the most part, I think it's just like, well, if they have the expansion pass, they'll talk about the game in a month, in 3 months, in 6 months, because that's just
but
what you would
I
want
think,
as a
yeah, I
developer.
think ultimately to answer your question, Robert, I think it's just you got to be comfortable with your franchise, and if you're comfortable with your franchise, like, you know, you're a big Far Cry fan, like, oh, I want to do all that stuff, like, buy it. You save money if you buy it, or if you're not comfortable with it, like, you worry about something like Ghost Recon Breakpoint or Battlefield or Call of Duty, of like, am I really going to play this after 6 weeks after launch? Like, make the developer prove to you that they deserve your time.
Yeah, I think this comes down to your comfort.
Yeah. All right. So you can send us those questions as well. Hashtag AskDigitalDays. Spotlight Patreon episodes are on the feed, like we just talked about. You can listen to like 45 minutes of me talking about 3 different animes to Michael that he made me watch.
And then you can go back and listen to Dave talk about food. Because his food thing's weirder than mine. Didn't know what type.
What?
Does that mean when you go to a restaurant, you just like they're like, what type? How do you want your steak cooked? And you panic and like look at Angela, like, answer my question. Like,
yeah,
does
absolutely.
she...
Yes, absolutely. No, she doesn't order for me, but she will if I fumble or make a mistake, she'll fix it. Yes.
Okay. So like, but like when they ask you what type of steak, do you immediately look at her and be like, can you answer for me? Or...
No, I can answer the question.
Okay, and then she'll just correct you, like, no. He doesn't want it burnt.
If it's wrong, yes. Like, there are some times where I'm scatterbrained, or I'm that person that's like, well, like I've got something else in my head for some reason, and then I'm just like, I mess up, but I am capable. Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to know because I remember, like, I think on that podcast he said, "Well done," and then she texted later like, "No, he likes it the normal way." Yeah.
So, but yep, you can listen to those there. You can follow us on Twitter. The main account is at Digital Days Pod. Michael's account is at the first MJC. Mine is at Good Dave Hunt. You can send Michael all your peanut butter and pretzel pictures to at the first MJC.
I'll just block you.
Facebook group and Discord server, like we mentioned a couple times, are linked in the show notes. And I think that's it. Gifts, like there's Teesprings accounts in there. Check it out. See if you want to buy a shirt, buy a hoodie. Send us some pictures if you do. Maybe we should think about throwing another design up there or something. We'll see. It's 2 years now, so I think we did it for 1 year. So yeah, it's been up there for like a year. So check it out. Other than that, I don't have anything else. You got anything, Michael?
No, just we'll have some more Vanguard impressions next week. And there's probably some new games coming out. My Guardians copy finally came in from Game
Yeah, I mean,
so...
on my list right now is I want to mess with Forza, I want to mess with Vanguard, I want to mess with Metroid Dread.
Yeah, Forza.
Yeah, so there's some stuff coming. So, but other than that, I hope everyone has a great week. Keep moving forward.
Don't be a dick.